Guys, please sit around.
I'm gonna have to leave a little early, so I don't want to make a big show of getting it.
You're gonna make a big show of anyway, as you slam the door on the
Hopefully not, right?
I mean, if you guys don't mind, we keep them up, but
Yeah, we don't mind.
I just want to some technical help.
What is the?
The mouse is not working.
Which one?
This one here, it's like oh, now it is. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
This is yours.
No, the mouse is supposed to be here. I'm using forgotten my mouse. Oh, the mouse is here.
Double genius.
Yes, cool. So yeah, now you don't need two mouses. Let's see if it works with my mouse. Maybe it works better with your mouse. No, my mouse is not working. Well, I'll do my best. I think I need your accessory consulting.
It's not working?
Again?
Yeah, I think I need you again. Maybe just coming close to it, it will kind of obey you, you know. Hi, Professor. How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good.
Which one works, right?
This is working.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you turn this on and this works. I don't know why. So, but okay.
What about?
May I?
Yes, let me just quickly, we're very happy to have Monica Piñanes with us for her second talk of the week. And this time it's on a topic that is not so much about capital markets, but more about participation and community participation, and in an area which has become very popular over the past 20, 30 years, participatory budgeting. The issue of participatory budgeting is very much discussed, and as we'll hear, Brazil was the innovator of this participatory budgeting. Porto Alegre, right, was the first place where they did. The community got together and organized a whole session in the plaza, was it? It was a place where they discussed what the city, municipality should be spending the money on. There's lots of nuances, of course, as Monica will talk about it. Not the entire city budget is up for grabs. There's only a certain portion that's put up for decision. But it was an innovation that got the fact that it worked made a lot of people excited. And so Monica has looked at this issue a lot, and the idea of participatory budgeting has spread around the world everywhere. We even have tried it in Armenia, I believe. I don't know to what exactly the format was, but anyway, great to hear about this initiative, which I believe is on the decline in Brazil.
Yeah. No, well, depends. I will
All right,
bring some of this data.
I just want to make it a little bit more exciting.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for to all of you for being here. Once again, you have to cope with me not just once, right? Twice. Some of you have been here for the second time. So like, oh my God, you're going to hear me again. And he left. I think he has already said, well, it's enough of her. So let me go. So today I will be talking about participatory budgeting, and I will bring some of the concepts, some of the idea. The idea I think is quite simple, and I will also bring examples and I will give some update of what is going on and what has been done around the world, and I'll bring some examples, particularly in two areas. One is in environment, how participatory budget has been used to amass more funds for to deal with environmental issues, climate change, and so on. But also, the second one I will leave as a surprise, because for my surprise, when I was in Professor
Drunken.
sorry,
Drunken.
yes, I didn't forget just Drunken class. I thought you had left and run away from my presentation.
Not at all.
So, and in one of your classes we mentioned it, and the class was very surprised, and someone even made a little joke, a smirk, and I will bring later on to talk a little bit more about this participatory budget. So, what is participatory budget? I don't know if any one of you here have had experience. Have you ever participated in an assembly or talked about it?
Only
No?
in my family.
In your family?
We have
That's very
participatory.
progressive.
So you discuss your budget there?
For some things.
Okay, cool, that's good. So participatory budget is very much what the name says, right? It's participation to decide the budget. And what is the budget? The budget of the city, of the local government, of the state, it could be even of the federal government, to decide how to put together and where does some of the resources that are already established that are going to be used by the government can go. Of course, you could say, well, so who participates in it? Theoretically, is all the population could participate, but what I experience that we have is usually that you have our representatives, the government, the executive, and usually they make the decisions where they allocate the money, and most of the money has to be allocated in things that are pending, right? They are from long-term projects or things that have to be paid in a yearly basis, such as, for example, salaries and maintenance things. So a little part of this was and then the question is, how can we involve people or have it so that they can decide what's going on? Because usually, or at least at some point, one of the largest and strongest complaints that we don't have a say, we don't have a voice to decide where the money goes. We don't even know if it goes, and we don't see the money, right? It's usually we pay taxes, people complain, there is a kind of a natural rejection against tax, and partially it's because we don't know where it goes. Right? So participatory budget was this instrument to combines democracy, is a tool, is a mechanism that combines more democratic, involved, engaged process into deciding where does the money go. Of course, the money is not the 100% budget of the government. It's a very minimal percentage or very small percentage that has been increasing over the time, and can usually go from 1% to 4%, and it usually stays 1% or less, right? It depends on the government. It's very much the decisions on how much, how it's going to be made, and even the process and the deadlines are usually decided by the government, okay? So, and usually this participation, when can we take part, right? Well, when does it happen? It happens when we are deciding about the budget. It happens where we are formulating policies or reviewing and analyzing the budget, right? It may happen when we are tracking if the expenditure, if it has really been implemented and done and where it's gone. And it also may happen to audit and control the system. Of course, this is the ideal world, right? That all of us citizens can exercise our fiscal citizenship in that way, but not always happens. And the idea is that not only it promotes the knowledge and the information, but also promotes a better governance with like more transparency, more accountability, and more participation in general, right? So the features, there are some main features of this. There's a basically discussion, and the discussion has to be about the financial aspects of it, in the budgetary processes. It usually pass through the municipality, and most of the participatory budgets that I know and that I have heard about are at the local level. There are some at the state level. For example, in Brazil, many states are now doing it, and now even the federal level is doing. Well, actually, they are in the process of starting it, right? They are actually involving the population, the 5-year plan for the whole government, and then doing some of the process of the participatory budgeting in the 5-year plan for allocation of resources. It's not totally there, but it's going, so it's very, very easy. It usually is a process that is repeated over years, and includes, it's essential to have the public participation and deliberation. How it happens, we are going to see it can happen in very many different ways, right? And does it really work? Well, you know, I think the success around the world has shown that it really works. And one quote, actually this is from, these two quotes are from a Brazilian, and this is from people from here, from this is from New York, and I had a quote at the end by an Armenian representative who says, well, actually it does work, but and we know that it works when we feel it works, right? So how do I know that it works? Well, if you feel that you have been heard, first thing is being vocal and you heard, and then you saw and sometimes you participate even in the implementation of it, then it worked, right? And then it's like, well, before some people, it's not just for the citizens or the participants, but it's also for the technicals, for the public officials, for the politicians who are part of the process in a direct or indirect way, and are informed as well and learn with the people what they are doing, right? So what they should be done or what they want. So just very quick, it started, as Alan said, in '89, so I don't need to go very long on this. Actually, Porto Alegre is claimed to be the first one, but there's always this claim. There are other cities in Rio Grande do Sul who had done it in the previous years in a very informal basis. And Rio Grande do Sul at the time was a state that was very much involved with some of the left-wing parties that were more committed to this participatory movement. And it was the change of the dictatorship into the more democratic regime. So it was the transition, and there was space for doing that, right? It then expanded to Brazil, and then to Latin America, and then to the world. And I'm going to bring some of the experiences. So Brazil definitely was the first, but I don't think today Brazil is definitely the only reference. Actually, for example, we have hubs of influential hubs. For example, Portugal. I think that Portugal is a very important hub in Europe, and Poland as well. And you have a lot of experience, and each one, the participatory budget is very flexible. It's not that you have a whole one sole model that you can apply, but you can actually, the idea is that you build together. And so there will be aspects that are very different from one country to the other, right? Of course, some basic rules apply, but the idea is like participate, voice, to know what we are doing, and then to assign to what I need, and to be able to compromise. Because to be in a participatory budget, you have to be able to negotiate and then to agree on a point or another. So these are the countries. I have the other countries. I'm going to jump. This is a very interesting. Let me see if I am able to. Yeah, these are very. It's like it's not totally updated, but it's some idea of some points that are of participatory budgeting. Oops, no. How do I do to go into the
Is it interactive map?
Yeah, it's an interactive map, but I want to be able to.
That's okay.
Okay, so
Is there a link?
yes, there is a link in the title. Okay, here.
The genius of
You
work.
see, you come. He's afraid of you.
Yeah.
You come here, and he's like, yes, I'm going to work.
That kind of
It's
is-
not me, but it doesn't work for you guys. It works just for me. So basically, I'm going to show you.
They take only 20%.
Yeah.
Other local budgets.
Basically, you have the maps. You can point, and it's for the whole world, right? You can point in the, but there's only 250 more or less budgets, and you not only you get the place, you get what's going on. You click, and then you have a table with the features of the PB in that country, how it works, the amount of money, and I wish I could show you because I love these maps, but I can't. So I'm going to go on. This is another one that is an atlas of the participatory budget, and actually it has all over the world, but actually it's a little bit updated. It's not update because it's 10,000 now. In 2020, it was 10,000, almost around 2,000, 10,000 municipalities or governments, mostly local governments, who are doing participatory budget. So it worked, or at least in terms of diffusion, right? And but this was actually, you can see that it was before the pandemic, 2019, and then after the pandemic, and it fell a lot. But then it recovered. During the pandemic was really critical. And for example, I don't know if you know, Armenia was starting the participatory budgeting process here, and they stopped. So they actually really start in 2023. And this is, in this atlas, you have, if not all, most of the countries that you can check and go. And then you have the support of the whole world, right? You have UN, UNDP, you have UNICEF, OECD, all saying, oh, that's the agenda, let's use it and let's implement it, right? Not only that, they support with money, they say, well, this is a way, it's really a strong way to engage community and to spread democracy, and is some of the best practice, one of the best practices to do this. And they have like the lists, who is participating or not. For example, here, this is already updated, more today, 11,000 to 2,000 places. And then here you have some experience. That brings to the point that Alan said, brought in his presentation, introduction. Well, it's only a small amount. But what is this small amount? Is that small? And what do we have to do to really learn and to know how to use that small amount, right? And so, for example, just a few cities in Brazil, Porto Alegre, that is let's say the cradle of the PB, it had like, in 2024, $8 million assigned to be decided by the participatory budget, right? And São Paulo had $131 million. And then it goes different. For Fortaleza, for example, I don't know who was here in Isis' presentation. So the place where she comes from, and is a very active center for like politics and reform and governance. It's 55 million. So it's not an unimportant amount, right? Armenia, for example, in 2023 had assigned 500 million drams for the participatory budget. And then this year is 1 million, and for next year is 1 million as well as billion, sorry. It was 500 million, and then it's
about $1.5 million.
Yes, I was thinking that when I in a place that I saw it was almost $1.5 million.
Divided by 400.
Yes, and it's not a small amount. It's actually a significant amount. If you not, of course, to solve all the problems of the country. And actually, I will talk a little bit later, but so I'm not going to spend on it now. But see, it's not that small amount. It is in some places, and where you don't have a lot of resources. But actually, when you look at it and when you think what it demands in terms of skills, preparation, knowledge, technical information, it's a lot to be done, right? Of course, they have 12 million people living in São Paulo. Maybe that's nothing. No, this is actually very significant.
Actually, 12 million people or whatever, 1,000 people to agree on how to spend that money is a big process.
Yes, the thing is, well, we are going to get to that point because now the 12 million people participate, right? And here are some examples about this around the world. Lisbon actually has a very interesting PB that is very much linked, connected with the green budget, right? They have done, it's one of the countries that I have seen looked in research that has the highest and the strongest program in linked to environmental issues. And almost a lot of the total budget goes to environmental projects. And you have different ways to measure. Of course, this is not my primary research, right? Primary data research, secondary. I read the papers and the reports, so I basically am portraying them to you. And you can see how many projects. Some of them, they have the number of projects and how big it is. This is particularly connected to the environmental issues. So what are the benefits? The benefits are somewhat, I think, not surprising, or at least not for me, but so sorry if I'm taking for granted. But it not only to solve problems, right, but also to help to create new solutions. Sometimes, and it's very common, we think that just replicating or copying a solution from another place, it's going to fit all, but it doesn't, right? We know very much that each place has a physical condition, a geographical condition, a political condition, and this changes a lot. So, and then actually what we want to is create solutions together, and there's many innovative and different things. But I think one of the main aspects, and that's why I think, well, it's such a small amount, it's actually the impact and the process is so much larger than to have that amount. The process includes educating financially, and when we educate financially and fiscally, actually not financial education, but fiscal education, you are teaching citizenship, right? You are teaching participation, why you pay for taxes. You are teaching and you are kind of empowering people, right? So, but this also teaches them some financial education, because they start learning. It's like something that you take home, like, well, I can only spend what I have, and I have to plan for what I have. So all these ideas, they seem sometimes very simple for us, sometimes they are not. And they create trust and, among people themselves. Sometimes they unite the groups of people that were not united. And we have had examples of metropolitan or regional PBs. There are 2 or 3 cities, they get together to say, well, we know we need to do something respect to the waste, the dump. So it's usually it's not affecting only one neighborhood or one area, right? And usually there is this idea that not in my backyard of the garbage areas or the dump areas. So then it's like, well, it's whose backyard? How we are going to reassign it, and how you're going to decide, and what money, how do we deal, it's affecting me or the other city and so on. And also, but also, not only does that, but also creates this link, this connection among the citizens, the people, the participants, but also creates a connection that's, say, more vertical with the public officials, the officers that are working locally. And this is very important, because sometimes there is a rivalry, or there's this kind of a prejudice against public officers. And I'm not getting to that, but it's like, well, they don't work, they take the money, they are corrupt, this and that. And this stuff shows that it's much harder, or there's a work to be done, and maybe we have to all invest in this work to be done. And then, actually, public officers learn with the process, and they learn the needs and the mood of the population, the culture that is going on there locally. So it's, to some extent, I think it's kind of enhance and catalyze the street level bureaucracy spirit in a positive way, right? And the place that they live, and it creates dialogues for what do we need and how to work. His results here is going to be you have many kinds of results. For example, sometimes they were not predicted, or they were not necessarily the initial primary focus of that project. For example, you had a project that was dealing with a road, but that road was connection between a community in the rural area to this urban area, and actually with that road improved like a health situation, education, the connection, and the information. So the projects usually they bring well-being, right? It's like they increase the public welfare in ways that you were not predicted before, right?
When you were doing the participatory budgeting, you mean? When
Yes.
you were doing the participatory budget, you decide onto this road, but you didn't expect there'll be all these other benefits
Yes.
that you would get.
Of course, in principle, you should, like, you cannot think as citizens or people who are participating that is very, like, they can make all these connections. They say, well, I need a road to export my production. You know what I have there, or just to get home. But then you start seeing that there are other things. And one of the largest impact is in infant mortality and child health, children's health, and education. You know, the side effects of these projects has been measured, not by me, but some of the experts, have been this well-being and this improved living condition, right? And there are other things. For example, in New York, they said, well, actually, after you start doing the PB, we had a decrease in complaints through the helpline or the hotline of the city. So, and it's very interesting to think of that. For me, who works with finance, my area was more of the collecting, tax collection. One of the things that was very surprising was to check that actually participatory budget impacts local revenues in a very positive way. How? Actually, some of the local governments, they noticed that they were not just deciding and having a participatory process, assigning some of that small amount, but the revenues increased because of fiscal consciousness, fiscal education.
Increased trust.
Yeah, and increase, like, you know the process, you know what you are doing. I think part of the education thing is to know why you do, how you do, what's going on, is to be part of the process and see that you are inserted in the process, right? And this is really, like, I think, what is the democratic about it. And for example, in the first years of the Porto Alegre experience, there was an increase in 300% of tax collection. I sometimes think these numbers, they are super optimistic, and I know how some of this is done, so it's not as accurate, but you could say that it's very, it's true. And what the other thing that's happening in many places, like in Brazil, in total, on average, they increased the tax collection, increased in 40% on average, right? This is significant. And I have to say that I do not know more details about this study. It could be just by a group or had other cuts, but still it's very important. And the other thing that of course comes hand in hand with the tax collection increase is that the tax delinquency. People start evading. They start being more like, you know, not just having an income income declaration, income.
Yeah, tax declaration.
Yeah, tax declaration, but also paying and being more responsible to even to request, for example, receipts, right? It's something that is very interesting, and it's kind of, well, you know, you are not targeting tax collection, you are not targeting increasing revenues, but for the local governments, particularly those who are smaller and have less on revenues, it was very important, and for me it was very surprising when I first saw it. So basically, here's going back to some of the basic rules. Are there rules? No. Yes. Are there rules? The main rules, like you have to make or to take into account the premise is that citizens are participating. Do they always participate? We are going to check later on in a slide about the limitations and the problems, the critiques. But usually, you have to have a participation process. You have to involve people, you have to disseminate the information, you have to educate people. So it's a longer process. You have to put it for a vote. And then also it's a learning process. The election and the voting of a project is also a learning process. And then you have to discuss. And that's what I have said. I think I mentioned it. And there is usually, it's not a process that needs a law. There are some countries or some local governments have established laws saying, well, it's going to be like this, the dates are like this, or they have some principles, but it's not. So there is not one model. It can be more representative or more consulting, going towards the consulting process, or a cooperative process of finding things together, or could be like once we decide it's going to be defined, that one. And it's also not a process that is dependent on the regime, the political regime of the country, nor or the previous laws of the country. Right? This is very interesting because you say, well, see, if it's participatory, if it's democrat, authoritarian government will never do it. And it's not true. We have many examples of countries that or has a kind of a trembling democracy, or just having a named democracy, or there are hybrid legal frameworks, or situations, or different regime, or more authoritarian or centralized political regimes, and they still use it, right? And the examples, and these are just very few examples. And for example, you can have, and then there is a combination, right? You can have a place where you have a mandatory law. It has a country where it says that it has the participatory process has to happen in decision on the budget, but it can happen in a full democracy, in authoritarian government, or in a kind of a more kind of a fleecy democracy, right? And you can, it's very flexible in terms of what can we do and how we can do. And in this sense, there is also constructing or building things together. Here are just continue. You have some of the features. I'm not going to delve into the feature of each system in each country, but I can give to you the slides and you can look at it. And the examples, as I said, they are kind of a mushrooming around the world. You have, for example, Czech Republic, that I didn't know there has been many municipalities. They have devoted 3.7 million euros to PB in 2023. Paris, actually the Ile de Paris, they had a huge amount. I forgot to write there, and I forgot what is this. But you have a lot of big, strong, and very visible municipalities doing this, and local governments. But you also have, doesn't need to be a municipality. Again, the flexibility is like you can do it in your district, you can do it in your neighborhood, you can do inter-districtal, inter-neighborhood. So there is a lot of, it depends on how you adjust better, and you can have it like, you can even have, what I think is fun, your elected representatives participate or not, right? You could say, no, this is for the people, for the citizens. You are already elected, and so there is a questioning on that, because some people thought, is it representative or is it a full democracy? And also there are stages. Maybe there is one stage that is more like open, and another stage that is more kind of a semi or representative system. So it kind of have different features that is going to is accommodating. So for example, just looking at giving another example. In 2006, Porto Alegre, again, the cradle of the PB, had this research, this survey with the population, and a lot of people agreed with it. If you look now, maybe they are going to say, well, we are not sure. Actually, in the last 5-10 years, some people, it kind of decreased drastically. And I was talking to a student, a former student of mine, on the phone this week, and she said, well, I thought they had stopped or cut the OP had, so P is PB, had disappeared. I said, no, actually there are 11,000. So it's not, first of all, it's not only Brazil. But I said it was not important anymore. I said, no, it is important, and it shows also how the contacts with associations, and how this start kind of having an impact, a synergetic impact and an expanding impact. So, but there are not, of course, it's not like 100%, right? There are a lot of critiques about the PB, right? First, one of the first things, well, am I represented, like the 12 million people that live in Sao Paulo, are they represented in the 12 people who participate in the participatory budget, in the assemblies? Of course not, it's obvious, but at the same time, and it goes in ebbs and flows. Sometimes it increases, sometimes it decreases, depends also if it's more volunteer basis or if it's elected base. For example, in Sao Paulo, we have councils, and we elect our representatives for all these councils, for the kids council, or the children health council, fiscal councils, housing, and then sometimes, of course, not very few people participate, unfortunately, I have to say that. And so, yes, maybe there are some groups are going to capture it. The thing is that, well, how much can we do so that if there is a capture, we can control it, right? And this can mean also that a big group, for example, one of the things like we are talking in São Paulo was about real estate developers who want to do some work in a particular area, and the local population that were like settlers, they didn't want to work. But the real interest developer, they had much more influence, power, it can be captured. And they can participate in the participatory budgeting process. Of course, they are citizens, right? They can participate both there and influence their representative or do some other kind of collusion in other places. So, yes, it will happen. And actually, it is somewhat a mirror of the society and of the democratic process in general that can have these flaws, but the only way to cope with them or to change them is participating, right? So you can have, the other fact is low technical knowledge, and this happens particularly in small towns or in places you think, well, local municipalities or small municipalities or governments, they are going to have support from the federal government. Well, some, right? In Brazil, for example, we have 5,700 municipalities. Of course, probably 5,600 municipalities are not going to have the support, or they are too small, and they do not have the technology or the skills or the education themselves to do it. But, and it's true, it might happen, but that's also a way of educating and forming people and expanding their knowledge. So it's true. And the other things about clientelism, because if I know that you participate in the council, I may say, well, look, our street needs something, a light, right? So it is a problem, and these logistical problems, how to get there. So if you have municipalities that are very far, or the population that is very spread in a rural area, how they are going to participate, or so only the urban people are going to be represented. And we have, I think I jumped a slide, but I'll cover it. So you have conflicts and disputes, sometimes just kind of even personal conflicts. I have seen people fighting for even religious conflicts, like, for example, I don't want to give money to health because we are going to do women's health, and I don't want to deal with like abortion or blood transfusion or this. So all of these things get involved in this. Lack of accountability. It's like, even if you say that we are participating here, look, it might happen that it's not totally divulged or like opened up in the public. And also, and more than that, it's like sometimes people will do it on purpose or not. So it's also a learning thing. And the management and the enforcement. Okay, so you have it done. You have the process complete. You have done the whole 9 yards. You have met, you have discussed, you have assigned, you have decided, you have voted, and then the prefecture, the mayor, the local government, or the government does not do it. Actually, a lot of local governments, they get caught because then they promise more than they can, because at some point they add some things, and they end up being with a debt that's huge. And this is one of the problems. For example, in Brazil, the state government's debt is limited by constitution, right? Not only debts, but some expenditures. And actually, if you hit that, you cannot do anything. But so it runs the risk of this mismanagement, bad governance of the thing. Let me just see if I missed something. Well, the cost, I think, sorry, it's a miss because it was in Portuguese. So the decisions are a little bit fragmented. I think I jumped this. And sometimes, actually, people just stop showing up, right? So, for example, and this I have seen many places, once you have achieved a goal, you just stop going. And this is not just for financial aspects, it's for fiscal aspects. It's for every single aspect. The councils, part of the problem of participation process is to keep it even in times that maybe you think you don't need it, right? Because actually this is what feeds into being learning and participating more. But otherwise, you just saw, and you see people kind of, oh, you know, I got my street light, so why am I going to fight for the street light on the other corner of the city? So there is all of these problems. And then, again, we're going back, so the amount is not big. Sometimes it ends up being connected or captured by the mandate or by the for example, if you did it in one government, how do you transfer to the other? So there is all the problems of budgeting that you have to worry, that I have been learning with Professor Drampian, and like in the sense of like, well, you have to spend, or you cannot spend more. So, and this is not as clear for some of the participants, like, well, why can't we do, and the idea of long-term projects is not also as clear and as obvious, like, well, we have to plan, can we do it in 1 year, can we do it in 2 years, or no, but in the next, if you were doing a project for 3 years, the budget is another one, it's not the same one. You might not have the same money. That money is to be spent in this project this year. So there are a lot of technical aspects, be them legal or or in terms of the project that's been developed, very specific, they can be a problem. And again, the idea that, well, is it really democracy? Because who ends there at the end of the day, who is there participate, are a few people. They're usually the more interested, and I can tell you an example. For example, in São Paulo, we had a problem, not a problem, it was, I consider it a problem, but anyway, some of these councils, they were captured by the church, right? It was and I'm sorry, I hope I do not offend anyone, but it was the evangelical church, and the evangelical church had a very strict and known positivist agenda. And then it was like, well, we have, the other groups start to getting organized and say, we have to do that. Actually, they won, and they participate, you know, they are disciplined and they participate. But there are some controversial aspects, well, how you choose to do the daycare center or the hospital that treats women, you know, so there are some of these, and here I'm giving a very broad example. So I know that we have few, I'm going to jump. The limits are, you know, these limits that I have mentioned already. So the models, they can, usually if you have a matrix, right, you have consensus, competitiveness, the citizens as consultants, or the citizens as decision maker, and it can vary from whatever you want, and I'm going just to show you this variability. So for example, in Porto Alegre is more of a consultation. In Czech Republic, it's more of a competitive. So you send projects and ideas. The first phase is a phase that you bid for ideas. So I want this, I want that, I want this way. So, and then there's a selection, and there's a second phase, and then even sometimes there are more phases, right? So, and it can be a small or big, and this, for example, in Scotland, they have these small grants, or mainstream or large grants, so they differ how they treat each one of them. Usually, it's this cycle. You design, you reform, engage, you set the priorities, you develop budgets, decision make, delivery, scrutiny, and evaluation. So it goes, and it's iterative, it goes on, and it has, participation can be in any single phase of this, right? It's usually defined or agreed upon. And you can have it's in repeated cycle decided for a long time. So how, okay, we have money to start the daycare, but what about paying for the workers there? What about paying for the products that you need there? What about paying for all the things that come with the maintenance of the place? So all of these, this is the more basic stuff, how the model can develop, but you can have change, and the premise is also that you will be the committee or the group that's taking part of this. They can have many moments of intervention and decision and participation in the process, right? So I'm going to jump this. So basically, this was like you decide, you collect ideas, and you make this, you decide about the priorities, and then sometimes there is an agenda set from which month this starts, and for how long does it take to decide, and when it's the implementation. For example, in Brazil, the fiscal year starts in January, right? So usually this goes with the fiscal year. In some places it starts in August. So it depends on the country, on the local municipality, and how well prepared they are, how long they want to do. And so, and now, having said that, I'm going to jump into two examples. One is the first one, I put the one the kids participatory budgeting. Actually, remember, I don't know if Professor Drupian remember, when you said about kids, we mentioned about the children taking part in the participatory budgeting, and the students like, how come, what they can do? Actually, it's...
I mean, children, but, from the senior grades.
No, but there are kids participating from 7th, 8th, and it's part of their fiscal and financial education, and it's very small things. Sometimes it's even where to put the drawing, whatever, and they do it inside the schools. They have a very large experience now inside the schools, deciding small things until and then older, that is up go to 18 years old, they have young adults participating in this too, that the decisions are heavier, they have more impact and everything. So, but they don't decide only on the school things. That's what is interesting. Again, the overlapping impacts are larger than just deciding where the money goes, right? It's the education, and it's the contact, the ability to negotiate. But what has been noticed is that, if, for example, insecurity has decreased. This is from a report that they have more than 12. They looked in several local governments that were doing participatory budget with kids and in schools, and they realized that most of them in Africa, right? They realized that there was insecurity went down, child neglect decreased, right? So there is because you start looking, if a child does not participate or does not want to talk or is not able, what's going on? So it started expanding the relationship and the knowledge about what is going on with respect to welfare, children's welfare. It also looked end up affecting children's the rights, or increasing the rights for children with disabilities. For example, if you have children that have problems with locomotion, right, mobility, and you have the other children start realizing that they need a ramp for those. And it's very interesting because children do engage in these things, right? You may think, they not have empathy. They do engage, and they actually fight and do the advocacy for the little friends. So it's very much interesting. So corruption with the funds of the school, the educational funds, and other things that work for example, it takes 2 hours to get to school. So maybe there's a bus now, this side has a bus, that is going to collect the students across the rural area and bring. So all of these things are not necessarily educational, but done in the context of looking into the budget assigned to schools. And these are some of the priorities, the other things in other countries. So recycling, something that children get very much involved in, recycling, cleaning, sports, creating new venues, like, oh, we need a soccer play field, or park. So there are a lot of involvement in other areas. In Brazil, it's done in schools, and there is like now a huge movement toward increasing it. And these are some of the, for example, this is in Guatemala, and some of how they report and talk to them. Of course, they are not talking to the little kids, but they are talking to the families. And that's also the beauty of it. It's involving the community and so on. So this is something that has worked. I also when I was reading here, I was thinking, well, when you start talking about this, you start, what is a city, right? Where do I live? Why is it important? Why it's raining and there is like a flood? And can I deal with it? Or my house is next to the river. So there are a lot of things that you start getting knowledgeable or understanding that you're part of it and influencing. And then there's part of the climate change, right? So is green? Do you have green projects? And there are thousands of green projects. Actually, it was very surprising for me because a lot of the projects were beautified projects. It's not green projects. It's like window washing, right, or window whatever projects, because they talk about to put a light in a park, or it's important, definitely important, and beautifying is a process very important, but it's not, you're sometimes discussing why do we have floods, or it's affecting the whole population, or it's much hotter so you need more AC in school, or this kind of aspects. And this is a report on localities all over the world, from Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Asia, showing the projects they have done. And they have done even projects like, for example, rebuilding a bridge that will actually make easier to cross a river. That is more of education, but it's linked to somehow to the fact that actually the rivers are raising that region, right? And they were not able to go to school during some times. Or, for example, that actually there was a landslide because of rain or other things, and then they had to deal with that too. So
let's leave some time for questions.
Yes. So just wrapping them, I would have other examples and how to use this. Portugal again and Poland are the two countries but Portugal is standing out in terms of the green projects. I think almost 100% of their budget goes to green projects, and they do everything. They do sustainability, riverbank restoration. But Poland and Spain are doing well too. But Portugal, I was very impressed. I'm going to jump these tables. And I was going to, this as another project. I just want to bring one final thing. This is participatory budgeting in Armenia. Here's the data. This is the atlas. The atlas has one of these pages for, the atlas of PB has one of these pages for each country that participates, each city, locality. For example, this is particularly Yerevan, right? This was written for 2022, 2022, so it got like a part of the period of the pandemics. And so it says that it has been compromised, and then it restarted now. So it has some of the features, the main trends, and how it has increased this active citizenship. And here's a photo of a meeting. Some of the cities, the pilots were in Abovian, Armavir, Ashitarak, and Jermuk. And in Abovian, they...
Greater metropolitan area.
Yes. And Yerevan is also part of it, but I think in terms of pilot, it was that. They did like something with, or like kids, or one of the projects that I heard, that I saw, it was about this education linked to safety in playground areas, but also crossing the roads. So it was very interesting. And I had the opportunity to take part in a meeting with women from all over Armenia who they are involved in the Democracy Today NGO, and we talked about their projects. It's very much interesting. First of all, they were all women. I want to bring the data about women participation. Actually, now women are participating more and more, sometimes more than men. But here, they were very much involved. They knew how it worked, what are the problems. Most of them were involved in the school projects, or they were teachers, directors, or deans of the schools. And then I was like, you know, it has been only 2 years to some extent, right? And they are so much already involved. And here is about what I meant about the 500 million to co-finance and support pilot projects, and the 1 billion drams. And some of the coatings, right? Lilia Frikian, who I don't know, she was saying, well, this is creating trust, it's working best, and there is like a bridge or a gap between leaders and communities. And I think this is very, very important. I always, sometimes, I know I exaggerate, but I say, well, participatory budgeting is not about just the budgeting. Maybe it's just a small thing, the 1% thing, but the big thing is the political participation, is education, is the connection, is the idea that you are learning your role and participate on it, right? And then this, so it's part of all that are this other person, the Ministry of Finance, and there was a woman, I think I missed, I didn't.
Minister Prime, advisor to Prime Minister.
Yeah, and then there was a quoting by a woman that fortunately.
Just go back, I think that's good. One back. This is the African.
No,
Democracy works best.
no, it
when
was
people-
a young woman. There's another quote that I wanted to bring, but I think I kind of.
Do you know the people who were involved in the other one, Farmazian?
Yes, Lily African actually is the country designated person for OGP partner, for Open Government Partnership Program. So formally she's, as stated over there on the slide, she's the head of department in the Office of Prime Minister.
But what about the other people who run that project in Armenia? Farmazian was one. Can you go back?
Vatan,
It's not
One
here.
more. One more. One more. One more. This Anastasia Fadiva and Alexander Farmazian.
no,
Farmazian.
No, this actually, this is, yes.
it's probably an article.
Yeah, the data, because this atlas was made in Portugal. Again, Portugal is kind of standing out, but by people from all over the world and from their local countries. For example, the person who did it for Brazil is a person who first was working in the implementation of the first experiences of participatory budgeting, and it was a Secretary of Finance in one of the cities in the south there. And so I guess these people are somewhat of consultants or researchers here in the country, right? Or people who worked with it or are working. And then,
Yeah, let's wrap it up. So
yeah, and then that's it. Basically,
Yeah.
you know, my point is that no matter how we have, I think my point both for the Monday's presentation and today's, like we have many tools that we can use. We have to make a very good use of this toolbox, right? It doesn't, we are against the market or this or that or the government. No, we have the tools. The tools are ours. We have to use them and participate and be part of it. So the same goes when we are talking about the carbon markets, but here too, if we do not, we have to take, to appropriate these tools, learn about them, and yes, they are technical sometimes, and with these, we are going to learn more things. And I'm really fierce advocate, I didn't know those words, advocate for this process, because we learn more in the process. And even with the mistakes, of course, but we learn more during the process of doing and communicating and talking and even demanding what we can demand and know what we can demand, because I don't know if you have worked in governments here. I have. It's a big difference when you are on this side complaining and demanding, and while on the other side, even if you want to do all of it, right, and you think they are right, it's really really much more complex and difficult to say what you can do, what you cannot, be for legal restrictions or other restrictions or even personal restrictions, whatever, limitations. So it's very important to be there, and only that we can do, I think, more and more social justice, being in any field that we are working on, they are part of it, right? So that's, that we have to appropriate it. So that's it, I'm here for.
Thank you. Questions? You get to ask the first question.
Rather.
Ram can go.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. This was a very good overview of the participatory budgeting practices all over the world, globally, and of course, you know, the Brazil perspective is very interesting. It was good to know that Brazil kind of initiated this highly democratic procedure of engaging citizens in very complex decision making, which budgeting is. And I was also very happy to hear. I mean, some of my questions were answered later on. I was going to ask you to talk about risks and critique, but you did it yourself. Because as any process, it has ups and downs, advantages and disadvantages. So you very, very well elaborated on those potential risks of this process of being captured as any other, you know, form of citizen participation. But I have like maybe two questions and then two or two others. First of all, I think it would be very interesting to study, or maybe you have the answer, to study the correlation between the share of participatory budgeting in different countries with the fact that the country is practicing program budgeting versus other forms like line item budgets, etc. Because I believe that a priori, that wherever there is program budgeting, probably the percentage of participatory budgeting may be higher, just because the budget is spelled out in project units, in program units. You know, so it's easier to comprehend, it's easier to understand, it's easier to participate.
When you mean program budgeting, you mean spending on health, on education, that high
Or on
level?
programs, yes,
Yeah.
or on programs spelled out in those sectors that you mentioned. So health sector may have like 15 programs. Environment may have 60 programs, etc. So like we do it in Army. That's the first question. The second one is, usually, as you described, participatory budgeting requires some overhead costs, because the government has to organize that, has to call out meetings, has to somehow organize the voting. In Armenia, for example, they found an easy way of doing it. They vote electronically on the government website, on the municipality website. So there's certain overhead needed. And quite often this overhead, this gap, is filled by international organizations who provide like supplemental grant to encourage this process. So it would be interesting to know how many cases you know where the participatory budgeting is accompanied by a grant or supported by an international organization. So maybe these two.
Do you have more questions? You can.
No.
Okay, I think it's very interesting. I think there is. I haven't seen much. I try to kind of do a kind of a browsing or brooming the whole literature, bibliometry, more like a study. And I haven't seen as much. But when you see, for example, the connections with other, for example, environment, it's not the fact that the government, the local government or the government, whatever, is doing some projects sometimes increases the visibility of a sector, and will increase investment, or will increase the population interest in that. Does not, for example, it is more common, that's my impression, when you have aggravated situations. For example, you have cities in the coastal areas that are more affected by climate change, right? By the
Risk of flooding.
Yes, for risk of flooding or levels of the sea level rise. So they are more conscious, or they are more involved in this process, and this to some extent adds up to the program, right? It's not, they are not doing together. The money that is assigned for each program is not related to the money that is assigned for each sector, right? And for example, in Brazil, you have a lot of, you have chunks or slices of the budget really well defined where it's going, particularly in health and education. It's a legal thing. You have the percentage already defined for federal, state, and municipal levels. But so you could have more, right? But I don't have the correlation. I think it's a very interesting point, and I think my impression is that it will emerge very quickly, seeing some, or even maybe showing other needs that we don't know.
It's just easy to check. I mean, you can just go to the highest percentages
Yes.
and check if these countries are practicing program budget.
It's very interesting because I had some graphs, and I ended up not including them, that were like the amount spent per area in the country, and how the amount spent per area in the participatory budget. But I didn't correlate to them. I just looked at them separately, and then, for example, particularly for environment, but I didn't have a lot of data. I didn't find a lot of data specifically, so I couldn't do it. But it's a very good idea, and I think it could. I think it's very important.
And my like gut feeling is that probably the metropolitan areas will be more capable of running that type of budget, because it needs an extra professionalism, extra capacity, which is not even achievable even for countries. I mean, not every country is running a program budget.
Yes, but it's I agree. But sometimes also it's not as formalized and well defined. So depending on the country, the budgetary process definitely can be different from country to country. But also it's not, well, sometimes you have areas that will be emphasized and then it bring, not exactly as a program budget, but that will pull some aspects. Yes, Molly, but just let me try to answer the second question about the overhead. I think that's one of the problems that they talked about. The criticism is like, well, it takes a lot of money. And the thing is not just money.
And time.
And time, exactly.
Which is also money.
Yeah, exactly. It's also money, but it's like democracy takes time and has a lot of backs and forths, right? And ebbs and flows, and we see it in many places. And this it's like you have to have a guardian of the system. Like, it is going to happen anyway, right? And so then how do you? Oh no, everybody. No, it happens. And so how do you deal with that? The budget has to be by the local government. The costs of running all of this usually is by the local government, and it's not included in the budget destined to the budgetary process, right? So they do the meetings,
it's
they
just
do
a
the
separate
calls.
chunk of money.
Yes, they even the places they send people to different places. In some places, it can be less of a problem because it's embedded. For example, in many places in Brazil, it's already embedded in the legislation. And it foresees or has the occurrence of assemblies, councils, and all of this. So it's not an extra money. It's extra work and extra time, because sometimes you have to do 2 meetings, one to decide about the health that is already they have the earmarked revenue for health, and then the one for budgetary participatory budget. So, and people say, well, I can't go to councils anymore, to meetings or to assemblies and to decide. I have decided there, and then there's conflicts of sometimes of the scope of each project, right? And then there's another thing that I didn't mention, but I wanted to mention. It's that the changes in technology in general affect very much what is going on in terms of this process. So, for example, now a lot of places have the digital consulting. It's everything on internet. You give your idea, you give your vote, you talk, and you do it even in not only metropolitan areas but extend areas. I have a friend who was doing work along a river that was basically affected by the Mariana dam, I don't know if you remember, that was like a big, one of the I think it was the largest disaster in environmental disaster.
Mine
It was a-
came down, broken.
it's and then actually he was able to do this put together all. It's more than 40 kilometers, much more than 40. I think it's 200 kilometers of extension of the damage that since the dam until the Atlantic Ocean, and he was able to put the communities together without them being together, just being virtually together. So and with apps. So in this sense, the technology or even AI, whatever, helps a lot, right? And makes the costs less. But also, you have to know how to deal with it, right? To use it and incentivize to use. Not everybody's right there. So it's a very important thing. And then the money for by international multilateral organizations. There's a lot of money. In one of the tables they showed there's like the World Bank, the UNDP, UNICEF, OECD. They are all putting money, and I think they help some of these local governments, not all of them. It's not all very successful. I did my main research was in reforms, tax administration reforms in the developing countries, and there's a lot of money by these organizations, but it was not always used because they didn't know how to use, they didn't know how to fill in the form or the minimal criteria, like to get the data and to say, well, I want to do this in this way. So for just an example, in Brazil, of the 5,700 local governments, only 340 participated because the other ones didn't know how to use.
And you know, Monica, that's also another role for the civil society or donor organizations, because quite often it doesn't only need some money, but also needs some expertise and capacity, which may be absolutely, I mean, people may be coming up with absolutely unreasonable ideas or projects which need to be polished to become doable, feasible.
Yes, no, that's it, definitely, and it's a big the process itself is a big part of the training and capacitating, but there's a huge lack of technical people, capacity, skills, in minimal skills. Sometimes you have the same person in a local government doing everything, you know, and they don't know. And then there's a problem of being captured by some consultants that they get the money and they don't pass. So, but I think it's a process of an educating process, a learning process, right? So did I?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been very inspiring, Monica. I'm curious, this is a variation of, or it's subsumed under the rubric of citizens' assemblies. That is another variation of what you've explained as participatory budgeting, and also of digital democracy as it's being experimented with in Taiwan and Estonia. The work that I have read on citizens' assemblies is, especially in Ireland, the participants are selected randomly. And the wonderful value of that is that then the decision-making represents a more or less genuine diversity of the population. It's not a representation of it, it really is an exercise in diversity. Have you encountered in the participatory budgeting cases any randomized selection of members?
No, sometimes it happens, but ad hoc. It's not that it has been ad hoc. I have a friend who actually he advocates for lottery, and he said it's part of your citizenship duty. So, and I think it should be. I think even like sometimes elective positions should be random, and you know, to be, you know, you do it for 1-2 years, because then not just for diversity and different ideas, but also to involve the people, you know, and also to avoid the thing like, you know, collusion, corruption, or the same person being there for 30 years. So I haven't seen, I think it's much, even in places where, I don't know about this case particularly, but I think it's very interesting. I advocate for it too. But I think sometimes what happens is who takes part, even in the process, right? Because sometimes you have a random process, right? But you have, or you are select among X people. In Brazil, you are voted. And so it's an election, or you are voted by your neighborhood or by the local population. But if that sometimes it also ends up being like has the same ones. The same ones who participate in one, they are going to be in the pool that is going to participate in another. So there is a kind of a vicious aspect, but it's still, I think it's very valid, and I think it should be more like that, like the jury service that they do. I think it should be like that. And then, of course, not everybody has the ability to do that. For example, in Brazil, we have a huge part of the population, and I say like more than 50%, who is kind of illiterate. Not that maybe they have a degree, but they don't even know how to read or write. So it's harder, right? And how do you do it? But it's still, I think you are absolutely right, and I would like to know more. Digital democracy is part of it, and the things that I had a group of participation and governance, and the things are overlapping, and very much, and then you enter in another discussion like technology, right? That is another big thing.
Yeah. I just as a footnote, it was through the Citizens' Assembly in Ireland that abortion came to be legalized.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was very surprised because it's a Catholic country, right? Or a religious country.
And then also gay marriage, same process.
Yeah.
A Catholic country approved both abortion and gay marriage.
Yeah, and I think,
The politicians got their okay from the citizen assemblies.
And the fact that you have a lot of now voting online, it protects the voters too. And it's very good. I think it's very interesting that you get benefits, side benefits that are really important in the process. Some people that would never go and vote online, now they are voting from home. Of course they can be tracked down, but it's so different. Every now and then I vote. Actually in Brazil there is excess of this process. We vote for everything. I have like friends
It's
sending.
mandatory too, right?
No, well, I'm not talking about the
National
or the local government. I'm talking about voting in this suggestion. For example, it's not mandatory to vote for the councils. I go voting because I think it's important, because I want people there who represent me. For example, in the time that we had this kind of the religious movement, capturing all the decision points, it was very important to vote. We lost, but still you were there, right? And it's important because at least you have two views. Otherwise, it's going to be only one view, and we compromise the whole thing.
Yeah, thanks. I was just thinking that budgeting in general is one of the main primary responsibilities every single government has towards its citizens, right? So what do you think, is it even possible that certain local or even central governments, they would negligently delegate their constitutional obligations to local communities under this disguise of PB-friendly policies?
I think there's always the risk. As I said, it's very small amount. So you're not going to delegate. See, if you have already governments, usually whatever, big or small, they already have 99% of their budget committed to paying people, third parties, whatever. So
Waste collection, water, service.
everything, all the service, they have to pay for all this, even electricity, right? You think, well, they're providing electricity to us, why they have to pay? It's different providers, it's a whole market that is working on there, right? And so I think it could be that, I think there could be a process of blaming. Oh, you decided it, you wanted it, right? But to say that you are going to delegate a larger amount, I don't think so because of this. But yes, it can be manipulated, and by many, by different actors, by the mayor, by political parties, and you see it being, in some places there is only one political party. I had another table that I didn't put here. It was about it was like the growth of the participatory budgeting and the participation of the parties. Because you think, oh, this is only the same thing that goes like, oh, authoritarian government are going to do participatory budget. Maybe yes, maybe it's using it well or not, right? And the parties, all the parties in Brazil were involved in the participatory budget, right and left, right? And you could see it increase. It was on the form of the Labour Party initially, yes, maybe it was. But still, it's not. It's once it's out there, it's going to be used, and it's good, right? It's about democracy. Good that all the parties think that they need to use an instrument and actually can vehiculate or they can bring these different ideas. So, but I don't think specifically, like very largely on what is our other side. But it can be manipulated. I don't know, Professor. Do you have any?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of observations on this point. I mean, good that you raised this. Essentially, Alan also mentioned that the budget is incremental. So the decision making is usually made, from year to year. At the edge of this, 3 to 5%. Everything else is like given.
Yes.
Social programs given, salaries given, general government expenditures given. I mean, schools, you have to continue maintain them, right? Hospitals, you have to kind of keep paying for them, etc., etc. So there's very little freedom actually to change anything, right? I mean, there's very little choice, and there's multiple attempts. Program budgeting is one attempt, but there are other multiple attempts to break this rule, but it is not very successful. So essentially, in that edge of the decision making, talking about like 1-2% of participatory budgeting, I think is quite a success, because this participating people, they're never going to question the issues of base of the budget, right? So they're gonna talk about like small projects. The other thing that I also wanted to mention, coming from the point that semi-authoritarian and even dictatorial countries practices. It looks like participatory budgeting is not only the manifestation of the democratic practices, but also a measure of efficiency.
Oh yes, that's true.
Because quite often the governments overlook very small, but important needs of the citizens, and that level of granularity is like missing in their overview. So in this way, they're just calling for the needs of the citizens that are invisible to them.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, absolutely right. Yes.
Can I just add another? In some authoritarian countries, it may be also used as a pressure valve. So
Oh, yes.
to give
Yes.
communities a sense that
Yes,
they have control
absolutely.
over
Or
it.
it
So they kind of
looks like it's like a measure of popularity. I mean, a measure
Yes.
of raising the popularity.
And you can even control who goes in and out, right? I mean, that's the thing. But it is true. I agree, and but I think because it has this, it can be used as almost a neutral tool, right? You decide. You have one. Let's decide. All the people here. We are deciding about the sewage channel there, or so. So I think, it's a very interesting tool, but it can be captured anyway, right? And the things that I don't think there's much to do in terms of I think the population, the people have to do. You have class today? Until when the class goes? Until when the
Until 9:15.
No, I mean the semester.
Oh, until December 12th.
Can I continue going? I stopped going because of my husband and my.
Sure, you can. But I mean, today we are having like a discussion of the budget request, so
Oh, okay. That is okay.
it's up to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we're taking her to dinner.
sure.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Yeah.
being here such a long time. And thank you, Alan,
Thank you,
for.
everyone, yes.
Thank you.
This was great. I think it was very interesting. You brought together a lot of, thanks, Al. You brought together a lot of information and you really presented it in an effective way. And so all the kind of different issues from positives to criticisms are now much clearer, I think, for us.